It's interesting. I call it the retirement philosophy, especially when, so like in Rich Dad Poor Dad, he talks about if you want to increase your income, you got to learn sales
Yeah.
and or leadership. And it really doesn't matter what you do for work. You could be a doctor. You need to learn leadership and business to own your own practice. And that applies literally to any technician related job.
Yeah.
If you want to be an entrepreneur and you work for a big company, you still need to learn leadership in order to navigate your way up the ladder, so to speak, and increase your income. And no matter what, you need to learn sales so that you can sell your ideas, if nothing else. And so that's essentially what I did. But the funny thing is, when you're working by the hour for the man, so to speak, and you're making 50 grand a year, maybe 100 grand a year if you're doing well, and you're like, okay, I could retire on $1 million. But once you start making 250, 300, 500 a year, I don't know if I can retire on $1 million. That's only 2 years worth of income. And so that's why it's a philosophy, right? And then here's the other thing. Like, sure, in theory, your expenses should go down, but what we've learned with inflation is that they actually don't go down. They go up, especially when your health, like towards the end of life, your health expenses kind of go through the roof. And in theory, if we all knew when we were going to die, it wouldn't be such a concern as to where we spend our money, because it's kind of like, as long as we spend it before we're gone, our kids can go earn their own money. Forget it, right? Just kidding. But the truth of it is, it's like, I actually want to be making the same amount of money or more in retirement than I do on a regular day-to-day basis. So
at least
I don't want to retire on 50 grand a year or 30 grand a year. Like, that's not fun. So it's a philosophy. Plus, here's the other thing. The more successful you are in terms of your ability to retire early, the longer your money needs to last. And one thing I've determined recently is, in this market today, man, have we ever learned how quickly things can change. Look at Warren Buffett, what he did with his assets during COVID. He liquidated everything, and for the first time in his entire life, he had to start hiring people to find places to put his money. It's such a big shift, and you see what happened to the market in 2008 down in the US with, mortgages and housing and all kinds of stuff. And my biggest complaint right now is, living in Saskatoon, Saskatchewan, is that we don't see the fluctuations in pricing as you do, let's say, in Ontario, BC, and many other markets in the US, especially what we've seen since COVID. And so now I actually liquidated some of my rental properties because it's just not fast enough. I used to be able to do somewhere between 10 to 15 up to 20% if you're really doing well on like a rental property, single family rental, just buying at reasonable market value, maybe a very slight discount, find a cash flow property with a suite or something in a good area, good tenants, and you'd pay down the mortgage, let's say 10 grand a year, whatever it is, a little bit of positive cash flow, very little appreciation, but you're like, you know what, 10, 15% return. That's pretty good, because annually inflation is 3%. I'm beating inflation. We're getting ahead. I'm happy.
a little higher now.
That's it. Inflation, like, think of it. I think, okay, 2019 pricing versus pricing up today even has softened a little bit with the increase in interest rates. Well, first of all, those interest rates are starting to eat away at that mortgage paydown you used to have, which was the best, safest bet in a real estate investment. Okay. Now, I know we don't know what the future holds, but that's part of the problem. And then now you look at, for example, what is the actual inflation rate? So all we know is gas prices and grocery prices have close to doubled in the last 2 to 3 years.
Yep.
Real estate prices have gone up on average. I don't really want to put a blanket statement, but I've seen in many areas, I've seen 40% increase in prices. I've even seen 100% increase in prices in some areas.
Yeah.
So that's where I'm saying is, like, so if you buy a rental property in an area where the price has gone up 40%, great. That didn't happen here. So I'm like, I got to find something better. So I'm investing back in my business and generating more cash. But then the problem is, of course, again, where do you put it? And I think that's the ultimate concern right now when it comes to retirement. Number one, how do you want to live? When are you going to retire? What are you going to do with your time? That's a whole nother conversation. But also the question is, these days, where do you put your money? Like, here's a great question I love to ask people. It's a philosophy question based around retirement. So all of a sudden, $20 million falls into your lap. Where do you put it? Like, even as a real estate investor, even if you're one of those 0% down, all investor money for you type of real estate investors, okay, like we have out there, the working partner, so to speak, if you had $20 million instant access, where would you put it? I mean, sure, you'd start looking into commercial projects, but if it was your money, you'd be hard pressed, and
yeah, I agree.
Right? Which type of asset gives you everything you need? Are you going to put it all in one place? Are you going to put it all into a commercial development? And if it's not your expertise in your forte, a commercial development could go either way. Really, I mean, there's still a certain amount of expertise, required, most definitely. Land development, it's again, you better know your stuff. And the thing with land development is, I think it's one of the safest places to put it, but the difference between getting, let's say, a 20 to 40 to 100 to 300% return, whatever the number is, let's just say 100% return on a piece of development land.
Yep.
Well, but you could see that return over 2 years, 10 years,
wow, yeah,
or 100 years. So that's my point, right? It's like that. I really like that question. What would you do with the money? And then how much money do you need to retire? So it's like, well, if you want to live lavishly, if you have ambition, I mean, what is the number? So if you need money that you're going to withdraw on, and you don't want to, eat away at it, and you're going to earn X percent, well, like, what's the number? Like $1 million isn't that much money anymore. 5 to 10 million bucks is like, okay, it's very doable. You see people do that in rental properties, right? But the business is different today. But now, is it 10, 15, 20 million? And that's, in some sense, you think it's a lot of money, but really, if like you're in Ontario,
yeah.
How many single family rental properties, if there is such a thing in your area, I should say, if there is such a thing as cash flowing rental properties, how many would that be? Single family, rentals. I mean, you'd have to go to the suburbs and buy something for probably $500,000, right?
Something. That's why I invest in the US now.
Well, that's the whole point.
Yeah.
And there is areas you can buy stuff for $100,000 in the US.